so much. Good afternoon and namaskar to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here in the annual meeting of Pakistan Society of Echocardiography. And I was trying to look for my friends and I'm not able to see any of them. But however, you're all our friends. And just now, Nusrat Ara showed Jamil Tajik, who was a great guy in Mayo Clinic. And I personally knew him, met him in 1998. The echocardiography has made a tremendous growth, but adult cardiologists should know that detect simple congenital heart disease, which we call as a grown-up congenital heart disease, so that the complications and consequences can be prevented. And this is Parlov, whose autograph I took when he came to Hyderabad. And when I wrote the comprehensive approach to congenital heart disease, he wrote a foreword to that. So I'm so very grateful to Parlov. Importance of echo has enhanced by the device closure that was introduced. This is Dr. Kurt Amplatz, whose Amplatz device we are using. And as a result, the echo has become more important, especially during the device closure. This is a 50-year-old lady, male, known case of ASD in a childhood, but a regular checkup was not done. And recently, the murmur had become prominent. The patient had developed early clubbing, mild cyanosis, GBP was raised. And what was surprising was, though there was a split-second sound, P2 was normal. It was not loud. And in the morning, in the first session, Dr. Saiba, she told, always I tell my postgraduates and the youngsters to examine the patient clinically and then do the echo. And here I would like to stress how important it is to collaborate your clinical findings with the echocardiography. If the P2 is not loud, that means it is not a pulmonary hypertension. Then why did the patient develop cyanosis and clubbing? There must be something else. So echo reported as a pulmonary stenosis. If there is a pulmonary stenosis, P2 should have been muffled. So it is not a pulmonary stenosis, it is a flow gradient because of the increased flow. So when we did the echo, and you can see here that the SVC is literally straddling on the septum. That means there is a sinus venosus type of ASD, and half of the SVC blood is coming into LA, and remaining coming into the RA. So as it is straddling, like a person sitting on the horse on two legs on either side, the blood is coming into the LA, and as a result, the patient was developing the cyanosis. And unless this is detected by echo and then confirmed by your catheterization, you'll be missing the diagnosis. So here we saw that the PA pressure was normal, there was no gradient, and the patient underwent for surgery. But today, Dr. Shiva is doing the stenting of this patient so that without surgery, the sinus venosus type of ASD can be treated. Now coming to another lady, my daughter's roommate's mother, she was a 55 years old lady, and somebody had done the diagnosis of diabetic cardiomyopathy and nephropathy because she had edema and JVP was raised, and then she was in failure. And I was surprised, and I said, how can the diabetic cardiomyopathy affect only RA and the RV dilatation? When I examined, she had a fixed split-second sound, soft systolic grade 2/6 murmur, and which is the hallmark of ASD. So I repeated the echo, and then there was a large ASD, did the TA also, and it was almost 30 millimeters, and then I closed it with the 32 millimeter device, and then the patient is absolutely normal now, and this is how the X-ray before and after. So you can literally detect the patient and time and then before the death and then save their precious life. But unfortunately, the 2D echo cannot make out whether the ASDs are big. I mean, we can make out whether they're small or big. Whether they are oval or irregular cannot be made out. And here the 4D echo comes in handy. And this is one of my patient with the large ASD. You can literally see from the RA side as well as the LV side. And not only that, once the device closure is done, we can see whether the endothelium has grown on the device or not. The gone are the day with this is the histopathology of animal study where they have seen the endothelium growth. But here you can literally see the growth of the endothelium, and this is how it looks, the glistening white endothelium. And that's how you can stop the aspirin or the whatever antiplatelets we are giving. So this is a 42-year-old man with a history of palpitation, exertional dyspnea, easy fatigue. When you look at the MOD, you can easily make out that there is a LV dilatation, and then there is a paradoxical septal movement, and this is the AST. And when you look at the short axis, you can see that the pulmonary artery is huge. Why the pulmonary artery is huge? Maybe the pulmonary hypertension. So why the pulmonary hypertension? We have to see. And here you can see that though there is a fluttering of the AML and there is an abnormality in the mode of the RV, and then also LV. And unless you go into the RV inflow, we'll be missing this diagnosis. And this is how somebody had missed the diagnosis. So in the RV inflow, you can see that there is a thin membrane fluttering in the right atrium. And this membrane is a divided right atrium, which Bob Anderson calls it as a divided right atrium, whereas it is called as the cor atrium dexter by Richard Van Praagh and Van Praagh. So this is how the membrane was there, and that membrane was causing the multiple embolization and causing the pulmonary hypertension. So here you can see that the injection of the contrast in the lower limb, you can make out that there is a negative shadow here, and that is because there is a left to right shunt in the AST. So still there is a left right shunt, and that is the membrane. So it is not the pH because of that. If it was a severe pH, the left to right shunt would not have been there. So the patient underwent surgical excision as well as the AST closure. So here you can see that when the membrane is not fenestrated, very slight contrast is coming into the proximal chamber. So this can be overcome by the 4D echo, and literally you can see from above as well as the below, and whether the membrane in the right atrium is fenestrated or not can be made out. And that's how I've started rupturing it with the balloon, so that the patient is prevented from going for the pulmonary embolization. So this is the 22 years old lady presenting with the breathlessness, 2 years of duration, and then diagnosis of mitral stenosis was done clinically. And then look at that, when the echo is done, you can see that there is a membrane in the left atrium. So this is called as the cor triatrium sinister, or as Bob Anderson puts it, it is the divided left atrium. So here again, you can make out that the membrane can be excised surgically. So this is another lady, a 22 years old lady who came with the diagnosis of mitral stenosis. And then, when we did the echo, we were shocked. There was not a cricket ball, it is a football in the left atrium. And it is going right up to the mitral valve and then coming back. So this mobile tumor with a narrow stalk connected to the fossa ovalis with the heterogeneous hypo and hyperechogenic foci was a myxoma. And then the moment we saw in the tumor plop and then look at that, it is coming into the mitral valve and then going back. We offered her emergency surgery. Unfortunately, she said her husband is out of station, and it was a Saturday when we made the diagnosis and convinced. And then she said she will get operated on Monday once her husband comes. But unfortunately, we lost her on the Sunday night itself due to the embolization. So it is not enough to make the diagnosis. It is very important to convince the patients as well as the attenders with the emergency of the embolization so that the precious life can be saved. So now we'll move on from mitral stenosis, the aortic regurgitation. The causes of non-rheumatic aortic regurgitations are prolapse of right coronary cuff, aortic root dilatation, anomaly of the aortic valve, bulboventricular VST, infective endocarditis, and surgical manipulation. Up to 20% of them can have this. And I will show you all these cases. The 52 years old male presented with the complaints of palpitation, and on examination, A2 was soft, P2 was loud, and then he had a collapsing pulse, and also there was a harsh systolic murmur. So a to and fro murmur was there. So to and fro murmurs indicate the VST with the AR or AS with AR, or it could be any other condition, but it is not a continuous murmur of the PDA or the AP window. So that's how clinically you must go to look at the story. So in the past, the people used to tell this is a Rogers murmur, it will disappear, and that's how we know. 40 years back, he was told that the hole will close, but today he has come with the severe AR. So here you can see that not only that there is the VST, there is a severe aortic regurgitation, and this is how we know the echo can prevent this. So this is from my textbook where I have shown the problem of small VST. Now within 5 minutes or 4.5 minutes, we can close the VST with the device, but left alone, they can go for the Venturi effect, and as a result, the non-coronary cusp can prolapse and then causing the non-coaptation and the aortic regurgitation. So to prevent this Venturi effect, even the small VSTs of 3 or 4 millimeter should be closed with the device. So this is the 36 years old man presented with the history of exertional dyspnea, and then there was a collapsing pulse. Once there is a 144 by 40, the pulse pressure is very wide, and then the patient had in a Erb's area the early diastolic murmur. So this was ejection systolic murmur was conducted to the carotid. So here you can see that there is something peculiar. The M mode, though it is the oldest one, we should not neglect. That can give a clue. And here you can see that instead of regular box-like pattern, here you can see that there is a fluttering of the valve. That is the cusp is fluttering. And then it is something is like ballooning out and coming back. So what is ballooning out? And you can see that the LV was dilated and there was a mild MR. And then you can see that something is prolapsing into the LV. And then in the parasternal long axis, you can literally see that the non-coronary cusp is prolapsing. So it is a myxomatous valve prolapsing, causing the AR. So this is not a rheumatic aortic regurgitation. So this is the prolapse. So here the repair may or may not be possible. The patient has to go for the valve replacement. So cusp prolapse can be isolated pathology, and that should be detected. And this 18 years old boy had undergone for surgery for tetralogy Fallot somewhere, and he came with a congestive cardiac failure. And tetralogy of Fallot patients do not develop congestive cardiac failure, but this patient had come with the florid congestive cardiac failure. So as you are seeing here, you can literally see that the aortic regurgitation is occurring not in the LV, it is occurring in the right ventricle. And this is extremely rare. And that is the reason the patient was in the congestive cardiac failure. And that is because despite the surgery, the overriding was not corrected properly. And that's how we know one cusp was in the RV, other cusp was in the LV. And though there is a thick membrane, which is the VST is closed, but the iatrogenic aortic regurgitation has occurred, and that has occurred into the RV. And now the patient went for the correction, and after correction, patient came back with after 1 month with the fever, and he had the vegetations. So this is how some of the patients, the infection is the number one enemy of any surgical corrections, and that's how we know one has to be very careful. So aortic regurgitation to the RV is extremely rare. Either it could be due to the surgical mishandling or extreme degree of the aortic cusp prolapse into the right ventricle. So that's how one should not miss the diagnosis of this rare causes of the AR, aortic regurgitation. This is the 26 years old presented with a history of recurrent lower respiratory infection, and the patient had the surgical closure of the VST done in 2005. And now he has come with the collapsing pulse. And the BP is 110 by almost 0 or 10. That means there is a severe AR. So here you can look at the patient with the parasternal long axis view. There is a aortic regurgitation. What is more important is in the apical fourth chamber view, you can see that the part of the septum is moving hypermobile, but this portion, which is the Gortys patch, is put by the surgeon, and that is adynamic and that is not moving. And then you have a systolic murmur, and there is a systolic murmur because of the residual VST going into the RV. And during the diastole, you can see the early diastolic or that murmur caused by the aortic regurgitation. So there are two jets. One jet is into the RV going due to the residual VST. Another jet in the diastole due to the aortic regurgitation. This is how 4D echo helped us to make the diagnosis. So here this is not a RSOV, it is not a aortic regurgitation of the regular, and this is the residual VST with the aortic regurgitation went for the redo surgery. Otherwise, we could have just residual VST, we could have closed it with the device and left it. And since there was a significant AR, we sent the patient for the surgery. So this is the 10 years old child came with the blurring of the vision, and then there was a subluxation of the lens, and that indicates that it's a Marfan syndrome. And then you can see that in a parasternal short axis, you can see the flap. The dissection flap is very nicely seen here. And apart from that, the aorta itself is dilated, and right from the ascending to the arch to the descending aorta, and this is in the abdominal aorta, the false lumen and the true lumen. You can see that the dissection has gone right up to that. So apart from that, there is a severe AR. So this is the patient had to be taken for the emergency surgery. Here you can see, apart from the cusps, you can see the flap of the dissection also. So coming to the triology of Fallot, unlike the tetralogy, there are three things are there. One, there is a pulmonary stenosis, RV hypertrophy, and then the right to left shunt at the atrial level. So this is the 30 years old lady with the 8 months amenorrhea. She is a pregnant lady. Saturation is 72, and pulmonary valve gradient is 134 millimeters of mercury. And here you can see that there is a giant right atrium. And this patient, we have to save both the mother as well as the child. So I did the balloon dilatation of the pulmonary stenosis, and then the gradient came down, and then the saturation improved to 90, and the risk to the fetus also came down, and as a result, she delivered normally. So this is the 36 years old female presented with the exertional dyspnea, and here you can see that the two views are very important to detect the PDA in these patients. One is the suprasternal view. Here you can see that we can. You want me to close the complete, sir? Close it?
Time is over. You are over.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll show the last case.
It, yeah.
This is the 25 years old lady, and you see something abnormal in the RV side. What is the abnormality? There are multiple channels are there, and this patient had a dilated coronary sinus, and literally you can see that this is a coronary AV fistula opening into the pulmonary artery. And this is how we can see that in the morning, Dr. Khan Saab showed the RA and the RV collapse, but now I'm showing you the LV collapse. And this is how, when the pulmonary hypertension is suprasystemic, and then there is Eisenmenger, this is how the LV collapse will occur. And one should remember that the most beautiful actress, Madhubala, we lost her because of the large VST with the Eisenmengers, and that should not happen. So whether in the young age or the old age, I said no patient as on today should go for the Eisenmenger. So friends, to conclude, the 2D echo, 3D echo, and the 4D echo, the precision is very important with the CT or CMRI. And what is important is pathologists make the perfect diagnosis, alas, a day too late. Echocardiographer makes not so perfect diagnosis, but in time to save the precious life. And thank you very much for the kind and the patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Very detailed, very good presentation. Due to lack of time, we have to interrupt. And there is an emphasis on clinical examination and correlation, what we were discussing earlier as well, and that's very important. Dr. Shabazz.
Just one short comment. Very nice presentation, very nice cases. And probably the message you try to give, that when we are seeing the congenital and the post-op congenital cases, we have to think out of the box and do something really which is needed. Thank you.
One comment I wanted to make actually at the end of
Go there.
our presentations, very valuable, knowledgeable slides and sharing of knowledge, and that highlighted the importance of the echocardiography in future cardiology. And we need to train more and more echocardiographers actually with latest these kind of capabilities. But how can we shorten that gap is to introduce the AI, and it is coming in this field actually. The people are there who are working, and they are developing, and they have developed the softwares actually which will help you to reduce the time of examination with all these gadgetries. And then the newer students and echocardiographics, they can learn more things of this echocardiography and make the diagnosis of rare diseases accurately.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's a very timely and important comment. The artificial intelligence is coming in a big way. But whatever is, ultimately the God-made intelligence is in the human being. So ultimately, we are responsible for even artificial intelligence. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Excellent cases. I just have a comment and a small question that in cases of a bicuspid valve, because it is a congenital anomaly, if there is severe AR, then it is going to lead to, and it is accompanied by a VST, then it is going to lead to an exaggeration of the pressure from left side to right side. I saw
Yes,
a
sir.
patient in which we had pressure of 164 millimeters. And your lecturer has explained to me today that what was the reason for that.
Venturi
question-
effect.
Yeah, Venturi effect. My question is that the Venturi effect which is created is pushing the blood from the LVOT into the RV. So
Yes.
that Venturi effect shall be augmented mainly in early or mid diastole. So is there going to be a difference in the shape of the parabola which we see from LVOT into RV in this case, because there is a mainly diastolic augmentation, or the shape is going to be the same? Thank you.
So whether it is the shape or the size, immaterial of that. Once there is a small VST, it has to be closed. And even the Garbude shunts I have closed with the ADO too. Because left alone, they come with the Venturi effect and the aortic cusp prolapsing. And that's how we know if we don't want the children to go for the VST closure and the aortic valve replacement at a later stage, which is more expensive and more complicated, better to close them with the device in the early stage only.
Dr. Lakshmi, I congratulate you for such a wonderful presentation, and you have
Thank you,
shown
sir.
so many interesting cases. This is actually not a question; it's a comment. You have shown one case of large ASD, and which developed pulmonary artery hypertension and a very dilated pulmonary artery. What happens in the early age when there is a large ASD? The pulmonary vasculature respond in a two-way. Either they are totally
Yes.
dilated and the patient goes in pulmonary edema very early. And
Yes,
some
sir.
of the patient pulmonary vasculature shows hyperreactivity and they becomes constricted, and later on there is a hypertrophy. And these patients develop pulmonary artery hypertension very early, and
Yes, sir.
we have to respond very early to a surgical way or a device way. So you have documented that your patient got embolism and there was a pulmonary infarct and that developed pulmonary hypertension. But one of the cause is because of a hypertrophied pulmonary vasculature at very early age, and they develop pulmonary artery hypertension at a very early age.
Yes, sir. Patient had a membrane right atrium, and that is the that was causing the stasis of the blood and then causing the embolization. But if you take the whole picture, PDA with pH, we can put the device. I have published the largest series in with the PDA pH, but the ASD pH, it's always very risky. We have to do the catheterization, get the PVRI, and unless it is suitable, we are not going to touch the patient. Otherwise, we'll be converting the ASD with the pH into the PPH. And that's how one has to be very careful, sir. The ASD with the pH patient, they do not do well if we try to intervene. So they have to be detected in time and close before they go to the school going age.
Okay, thank you very much for a very
Thank you,
interesting
sir.
session.